Have you ever had a little tickle from the universe? It's kind of like when you get your hair and you just go tickle, tickle. And it's that very subtle feeling. Because there's a concept called the feather, the brick, and the truck that I like to talk about. And the feather is just that really subtle, light little tickle from the universe where something's not quite right. We kind of get that feeling that there's something we should change. We kind of have that feeling of there's something more I could be doing. You see, the universe is actually working with you. Yet most people, when things start to go wrong, say that the universe is working against them. The truth is that we have programs in our mind that work against us. In fact, we have to change our behavior whilst changing the programs in order for that not to happen. So we say that life is happening through you, not to you. And if that's the truth, then the universe will escalate its feedback when we ignore our own truth. And it all starts here with that little tickle from the feather. So we get that subtle nudge, we get the something's not quite right, we get the, oh, maybe I should change that thing. And the signs of this happening are a little bit of dissatisfaction, a kind of gut feeling, a light bulb moment of maybe something's going to happen. And sometimes we act on those things and sometimes we're too busy or we have too much on or we're just not really focused on that right now and we ignore that little feather. That little feather, if you start paying attention to it, will absolutely change your life. That subtle tickle from the universe is the first way that the energetic alignment of who you are with the function of the way that the world works energetically is starting to go off track. In other words, you have set through setting your goals a path or a timeline that you want to travel on. And the minute that you start going off that timeline, the universe is going to say, hey, I want to support you. You're my friend. I love you. And it's going to just go tickle, tickle, and see if it can nudge you back on the right path for you. Most of the time though, most people ignore the feather. And that's when we start to get a warning. We get what's called the brick. So I want you to imagine this. The feather, that nice little tickle like your hair brushing across your face, is quite okay. However, when we get the brick, it's like boom, hits us in the head, and it kind of hurts a bit. This is the warning that you're not on the right path. In fact, you've strayed off the path. You're not just looking at the other alternatives, you've actually walked away from your original goal. And in this arena, you get things like friction. You get frustrated. You get the same problem happening again and again. And you start asking yourself the question, why does this keep happening? What am I not getting? Why am I stuck? Why aren't I getting the results? And the sign that this is the brick is that it's a repeated pattern. The pain that you're experiencing, you keep repeating the pattern. And the thing is that the brick is actually sent to you in order that you actually pay attention, that you're actually getting a sign that you've strayed off your path. The universe is working with you. Yet what often happens is people ignore the brick. Even though it's painful, they ignore it. And along comes the Mack truck. This is a sign that's so significant that you can no longer ignore it. This is things like your business collapsing. This is things like a relationship breakdown. This is things like that your health goes into crisis. This is where your whole life has to change in order for you to even consider changing. And what most people say at this point is, oh my God, everything had to fall apart in order for me to change. The thing is that even when that's happened, some people don't change. So how do we know that we're getting the feather or the brick or the truck? Well, see, the thing is this. A lot of people never notice the feather. It's so subtle. And it's only through awareness and an expansion of our consciousness that we start to notice the little feathers. And let me tell you, they're everywhere. It's almost like, I envisage it like a bit of a car wash, right? You know when you drive your car into a car wash, there's those spinny things on each side? I feel like my life is going towards my goals with those spinny things on the side, and they're just made of little feathers and they spin around and float past me, and they're just like, yep, you're going in the right direction. Keep going. That's it. That's the way. And I hear the feathers. And when I get the feather, I actually make a change. If I start to feel the feather, it's like, oh, I've moved away from the goal. I'm not focused. I'm being distracted. Back onto the goal. And I do that every time. In fact, all high performers do. If, though, I step off the path, then I'm going to get a brick, and that's a little bit like coming out of the car wash and getting into a car accident because the soap was still on your windscreen. So you drive out of the car wash, you've hit the car, your car's a mess, their car's a mess, and now there's drama that you have to deal with. Now, a lot of people need the drama to create energy. The little feathers in the car wash don't give them enough energy to push forward. They need the car accident to actually go, that's right, I'm supposed to be doing this. However, the brick comes along and they're like, oh, yep, okay, I've got to do something. And it almost gives them energy because there's a little bit of drama in it. And a lot of people thrive off that drama. And it helps push them back on track for a period of time. However, it doesn't necessarily get them to change the way that they've been behaving. The thing is that if you don't get back in line at that point, then you're going to be hit by the truck. And the truck's going to hurt because it is actually going to change your life because you've strayed so far from the path that you wanted to create your life on that the universe is like, hey, hello, you told me you wanted this. Get back there. And the truck basically charges through you to push you back on track. Now, those people that are low performers in life, they actually ignore the feather. They resist the brick, and they often get hit multiple times by the brick because of that. And then they get hit by the truck. However, high performers act on the feather. The minute they feel that little tickle on their side of their face, they're like, oh, yep, refocus. And it happens often. However, because they act on the feather, most normal people never notice it. Occasionally, someone who's a high performer will actually feel the brick a little bit. And at this point, they'll pivot. They'll realize that they've gone off track and they'll pivot either back on track or onto a whole new path altogether with intention. And in fact, high performers very rarely meet the truck. So how do you become a high performer? How do you pay attention to the feather before you ever get hit by the brick or the truck? Well, it's all related to standards. So what are the standards you're willing to accept for yourself? Because let's say you've set a goal to be able to lift, 100 kilos in a bench press in a year. Now, you know that you're going to have to eat healthy, you're going to have to train, and you're even going to have to do some cardio to get your level of fitness up in order to be able to lift that 100 kilos. So you start off really great. You're eating plenty of protein, a little bit of carbs, you're doing all the right things, you're following your macros, and then you go out for dinner and you kind of go, it probably doesn't really matter. I'm pretty strong anyway. I could just keep pumping that iron and I'll eventually get there. However, the brick will come along and that might look like a bit of a torn muscle in your shoulder and you have to recover and you have to take time. And so you get back onto the healthy eating and you get back on the path and then you go out and you have a night where it's a bit of a bender and you come back in and you realize that you've woken up in the hospital, You've actually cut your arm somehow. You don't even know how because you were so off your face. That's the truck. But it's all related to our standards. So are you willing to have high enough standards to be the person you want to be that has the result that you want to have? Are you willing to be self-led enough so that as others try to draw you off your path, you intentionally come back on yourself? And are you willing to be decisive enough that you know when it's time to intentionally step off the path and intentionally step back on it? If you've experienced something like this in your life where you kind of got the warning, you didn't really do much with it, you then got the brick in your face, it hurt, but you still didn't do much with it, and then you got the big truck knocking you over and completely transforming your life, then you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. However, if you're someone who's currently being hit by the brick, where the pattern just keeps repeating, where you seem to get to the same stage every time and you don't seem to move forward, now is the time to take action. Now is the time to change. Pull yourself back on your path. Have your high set of standards. Be self-led. Be decisive about your life and make a change before that truck hits you. If you want to be a high performer, let the feathers guide you through life. Let them be the barometer of how well you're going. Let them just gently flutter past you as you move through that metaphorical car wash that is life.